The lady who was shot, she was killed in her bed next to her life partner. And they accessed the house without one of them even becoming aware of it. They woke up with the assailants in the room. Then it's too late. And of course, I think generally speaking, tourists might be going to areas where normally we would not go after dark or something like that. But the vulnerability of people in the rural area is of concern. I think on the one hand, it might be that the threat is underestimated. On the other hand, I think we are seeing tourists being targeted in a different way. Because we've had quite a few incidents of tourists arriving by air at Oliver Tambo International in Johannesburg. And then they are followed to their guest house. And they are attacked at the guest house or en route, which means that within the system, within the airport, there might be somebody who's involved in either checking the baggage or that's got some inside information to say these guys have got a lot of cash with them, or cameras or computers, laptop computers or whatever the case might be. Because a lot of the stuff that is normally stolen are stuff that could easily be exchanged for money. If I may call it, the poor portion of society is not targeted to the same extent, because if there is not a cash incentive as a motive in the crime, then the crime is senseless. What we do find in the African environment is very brutal crimes, but that is related to body parts from a traditional healing perspective. And in some cases it could even be related to witchcraft. We've had now an incident, it was late last week, in a town called Ermelo, which is quite a big town, where a lady was, she and her husband were on their way, I think, to a restaurant, walking, and they were attacked en route, and she was hijacked, and they cut off her toes. I think 4 toes from the 1 foot. If traditional medicine or some kind of ancestral motive comes into play, it's difficult to draw a clear distinction between brute force in terms of assault and deliberate damage. Yeah. We see that with animals as well, especially now lions are being targeted and their paws are cut off. And much of their intestines, the heart or something like that, is removed. Now, especially the game farmers. I think the rhino horn has been proven that it hasn't got any healing capabilities, but nonetheless it's carrying on. So somewhere there's a market which makes the risk worthwhile. But most of that kind of thing would be related to traditional medicine and traditional beliefs. I am the Assistant General Manager of the TAU. It's one of the oldest agricultural unions. It caters in particular for commercial farmers. And it's been in existence now, it's in its 121st year, so it's been around a long time. But it had its roots in the old Transvaal, which was an independent republic of the Boers way back before the Anglo-Boer War. It dates back to 1897. Approximately the membership would be, if we count all of them, would be about 6,000. But they are in different categories. But we cater specifically for commercial farmers. There are cheaper categories, for instance, for a farm manager or even for a farm worker. And then in some cases, in full membership, the wives of the farmers are also accommodated in a specific category of membership. No, it's open to everyone. We've got a mission statement which boils down to belief to a large extent. Belief in the sense that we believe in the Holy Trinity, and that we firmly believe that the land is a gift from God, and we have to protect it to such an extent that we can pass it on to our children. Mostly into Christian tradition, and although the vast majority of the members are white, not all of them are white. We have some black and some Indian members as well. The most recent study by Statistics South Africa has indicated that there should be about 34,000 agricultural units at the moment. Now, some of those units might, more than one unit might belong to a single farmer. So I think if we look at the total of commercial farmers, meaning farmers who produce for the market, we will probably have 32,000, 33,000 maybe. And I would say, roughly speaking, about 55% of them would be Afrikaners. If we talk about for the market, produced for the market, I think we must bear in mind that there are subsistence farmers who cater for themselves, or small-scale farmers who sell their goods directly. A researcher from the Institute of Security Studies, based on statistics of 2014, has determined that the average murder ratio in South Africa in 2014 was 33 per 100,000. He also utilized the official statistics from the police service to determine what the ratio of police members being killed in the execution of their duty was, and that was 55. If we really look at farmers, not their family members, only farmers, who were murdered in that same year, it rose to 136. If the family members are included from the statistics at my disposal, about 85% of all murders were either the farmer or the direct family members of the farmer living with him on the farm. If we look at the statistics, generally speaking, we see murder about at a rate of in the late 70s, 80. If I look at last year, for an example, in 2017, we had 82 murders in the year. This is all cases that is reported to us. I must emphasize that these statistics are not official statistics. The police, who used to keep separate statistics of violent crimes on farms, ceased to make those statistics available for public consumption at about 2006, 2007, which meant that we were forced to compile our own statistics. And at the moment we've got a database going back to the 1st of January 1990, which we have compiled per province. There are 9 provinces in the country, per province per year. And the total murders over that period at the moment is 1,939 murders. I think they've included it in the total murders of the country, because in their vocabulary they do not separate murdered victims per category, if you may call it that. However, we are of the opinion, and based on the ratios which I have mentioned, that the issue of violent crimes on farms is so unique that it should be addressed. Currently, and since 1998, farm murders are regarded as a national priority crime by the police. And because it's a national priority crime, I would argue that based on that reality, the real and reported figures should be made available. If I look at our figures, I am inclined to say that I think our murder figure is quite accurate, at least 96% accurate. The attack figure, that is the figure and it includes murders, but it also includes assault and rape and robbery and that kind of crime, is relatively conservative, because not all cases are reported in the media, and therefore we are totally dependent on what we pick up in the media or what is reported to us. It's difficult. Officially, the motive for such an attack would be robbery. But the fact of the matter is that if you really analyze the victims, it is predominantly the farmer who is being murdered. And therefore there's a very strong perception that there is a relationship between these attacks and the land issue. Because the land issue has been a burning issue right from 1994.
What is the land issue?
It is said that the white people stole the land. We have gone through an exercise in 2017 offering a reward of 100,000 rand to anybody who could prove that their land was stolen. And we did not get a single application for that reward. I think one must realize that the history of South Africa has gone through different phases. I have mentioned that this union is 120 years old, which means that its establishment was in the old Republic of Transvaal, which was a internationally recognized republic, Boer republic at the time, similar to the Free State. There were then Transvaal laws applied to this part of the world. Then the Union of South Africa came into being in 1910. Not to talk about the times before that when the British and the Dutch and everybody had a say in the government of South Africa. But the widely perceived perception out there is, and which is kept alive for ideological purposes, I believe, is that most of the land would belong to the blacks of this country. I think my descendants came to the Cape Town in 1690, so I'm an Afrikaner. I was born in the Free State and I regard myself as an Afrikaner. Yes, I haven't got anywhere else to go. I feel at home in the Free State, but at the moment I'm working in Gauteng.
Are you worried that the political reforms will take place that are similar to those in Mugabe, Zimbabwe, with land grabs?
Yes, I think there's a possibility, and until more clarity is forthcoming after the election of the new ANC president, who has mentioned that expropriation will take place without compensation. That statement in itself, without being properly clarified, is of major concern, because it will affect the economy of this country. It will affect investors' confidence, and inevitably it will affect food production, which will put food security at stake. At the moment, we are one of a very limited number of African states able to ensure food security for our own people, and not only for our own people, but also to the citizens of neighboring countries, Lesotho, Swaziland, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, Botswana, Namibia, and even further north. And then I'm not even referring to the valuable foreign exchange which we earn by means of exports. Unfortunately, the way in which they are threatened has caused them to take extraordinary security precautions. For that purpose, we have established what we call a farm watch, and that is a number of local farmers who form themselves into an informal voluntary structure. We do our best to train those people to be responsible firearm owners, to be able to use those firearms in case of self-defense, but also to take the necessary safety and security precautions to such an extent that it will provide them with the longest possible warning time that something unnatural is in the process of developing. In this case, the ideal is to prevent any perpetrator from entering the homestead without the people in the house being aware of such efforts. So that early warning is crucial. Not only that, but effective communication, because in the rural areas, your neighbor is your closest base of support for help should it be required. So we rely on radio communication, which means that you could send out an alarm to a number of people at the same time, and they are, if it's in the early hours of the morning, they are awoken by it, and they can respond if they are well organized. So things like fences, security lights, alarm systems, burglar bars, security doors. In fact, the homestead becomes almost a sort of a prison once the sun is set. Well, in the rural areas, the police stations are few and far apart, which means that from a time and distance perspective, the response is problematic. Also, in some cases, especially if the farmer is Afrikaans speaking and the local policeman cannot understand Afrikaans, then there is a communication problem. Or even though the crime has been regarded as a national priority crime, the logistics available to the police at that police station, I'm talking about vehicles, radios, personnel, might not be sufficient to act effectively. We've had cases where a farmer was confronted by 13 assailants, all armed with assault rifles. Now, in military terms, 13 people, all armed with assault rifles, are almost half a platoon. And if that is what an individual farmer has to confront, it just gives you an idea of how the deck is stacked against them. Well, I think we must accept that in terms of available intelligence, meaning what is the routine of the farmer, what is the inside layout of the house, where is the safe, where's the safe keys, when does the farmer go to the bank to draw money, all those factors are available to the attackers, because it sometimes becomes very evident that they have good information as to when, for an example, the farmer has drawn money to pay his workers. Where the life on a farm used to be an idyllic experience, and I can remember that from my childhood, all of a sudden it has become exactly the opposite. It is quite evident from the available statistics that most of the crimes are concentrated in the northern provinces. In comparison with the Eastern Cape, the Western Cape, and the Northern Cape further south and to the west, it is quite evident that most of these attacks take place in the areas to the north of the country, where we find ourselves. So that idyllic farm life has changed into, when the sun rises, making very sure that everything is in order. And for most farmers who have to go out there to the lands, leaving their family, wife and children behind, it also means that they have to be aware of potential threats and be able to handle it should it be necessary. Yes, the Human Rights Commission in South Africa launched a variety of public hearings. The first, to the best of my knowledge, delivered their report in 2003. We were specifically asked during the last session of the Human Rights Commission in, I think it was 2015, to deliver a report and to give evidence. In that request, there were specific questions pertaining to the efficiency of police action. And to a large extent, I think the bottom line is that if one accepts that you are talking about a crime against a group of people who has been declared a national priority, we do not really see at police station level out there in the rural areas that it is being treated accordingly. I asked myself, what more grave form of a human rights violation could exist other than to murder a person, or to torture a person, or to injure a person to such an extent that they cannot function properly. And now I'm not even talking about the traumatic consequences on the psychology of life out there. Well, I think we have a duty to ensure that there is food on the table for every citizen in this country. We also believe that food has no color, so the farmers produce for the consumers out there. Some of them are very fortunate in having a 3 or a 5-course meal. Others should be or have no option but to be satisfied with a bowl of maize meal. But fact of the matter is, without food, a country cannot live. If we look at the global picture, we are far removed from all the countries who produce excess volumes of food. So to import it, it is not going to be a cost-effective exercise. Therefore, I think the time has come for the government to recognize that the food security which the commercial farmers are ensuring is in fact a national strategic value.